What is it you want, Barry? What do you want? You want the moon? Just say the word and I'll throw a lasso around it and pull it down.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, dying times here.
Come with me if you want to live.
That's it, man. Game over, man. Game over.
The Force will be with you, always.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to 20th Century Geek. I'm your regular host, Scott Weatherly, and today I'm being joined by Matt. Matt, how are you doing, mate?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, that's good. I'm glad you're here. So, Matt, you've been on before. You and Jordan are usually sort of a bit of a double act, but you're coming on your own today.
Flying solo.
Flying solo. But just to get a bit of a pop in, sort of, you've obviously got the ToonJam podcast out and about. So, before we do anything, give that a bit of a push, bit of a plug.
Okay, yeah, a ToonJam podcast. For any of you that are interested in cartoons from pretty much whenever, we do a weekly show and cover. I mean, initially it was just 90s, but we've ended up breaking the boundaries of our own rules and going into all ages. So we're currently doing a run on MTV cartoons, and then who knows what's next. Sort of figure out as we go. But yeah, it's just a fun show where we sort of review shows and check out if it's remembered just for pure nostalgia or actually
is any good.
Yeah.
You've had some interesting ones on there. Like, let's say, listeners, these aren't just your regular cartoons. You've had some really obscure, ones. Let's say when you were doing the 90s and stuff, and you sort of like an episode would pop up, and I'm like, "Ooh, Fat Dog Mendoza." I haven't thought about that in years.
Yeah. It's just trying to do a few mainstream ones, but then ones that maybe no one remembers, or just we remember, or we try to hit those ones where you're trying to tell your mates, do you remember this one? I can't remember what it was, but it had a dog in it.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, that's every cartoon.
I have to admit, because I mean, I've got Ellie. She's 7 now, and she's obviously watching all kinds of different bits and pieces, mostly on YouTube, to be fair. But she watches all kinds of cartoons from like Cartoon Network and stuff. And it's like that cycle now. Like everyone who was watching cartoons in the 90s and early 2000s, like there's really weird cartoons or sort of stuff that was, and I'm thinking like Rocko's Modern Life through to Cow and Chicken and all those kinds of things. Clearly are now making cartoons. And it's clearly coming through that, like, oh, okay, I can see where this came from.
Yeah.
There's one at the moment she watches called The Adventures of Gumball and something else.
Yes, yeah. It's like a Cartoon Network.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, this.
Animation.
Yeah, I was like, that looks rubbish. And then I sort of accidentally watched an episode and I was like, oh, no, this is genius.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I love what you guys do. It's so well worth listening to, guys. Check it out. Check out ToonJam. And you're on everything, aren't you? So you're on all the usual podcast characters.
Yeah, you can find us wherever you listen to your podcast. So it's just ToonJam. You'll find us there. Little green splat.
Yeah. But I've also got to say thank you because Jordan obviously designed one of my logos as well. So, all kinds of talent coming from that place.
He's good. He's good.
Yeah.
So as well.
I was going to say, I assumed he would have done. Otherwise, it was sort of like real smacking his face if you're like, no, somebody else will do ours.
Never.
Yeah. So today we are going to be talking about a couple of films. It's going to be a 2-parter, I think, this one. But we're going to be talking about. I've called it like pulp hero movies of the early 90s. And mainly because they sort of fit into sort of like the pulp hero category. However, only one of the films we talk about actually appeared in Pulp Adventures of the 30s. Others appeared in early comics and that sort of thing, but mostly they're just sort of later things. So the films we're going to talk about in the next couple of episodes is Dick Tracy from 1990, Darkman from 1990, The Rocketeer from 1991, and then we're going to jump forward into the 90s to The Shadow in 1994 and The Phantom in 1997. And of all of those, only The Shadow is actually a pulp hero. Dick Tracy and The Phantom appeared in sort of comics, and then the other two just I just happened to sort of just fit into this
Yeah, well, I
mold.
think like I know the Rocketeer. Obviously, that was a comic book one in the
Mm-hmm.
was it 81 or
81,
something?
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I know it's got like references to the Shadow in it and stuff, hasn't
Yes.
it? So
Yeah, yeah. It is in the
yeah,
Shadows world. It sort of fits in that sort of category. I had it. I bought it off Comixology on a sale long time ago.
yeah,
And I sort of forgot I had it. And I was when I was sort of setting this, I was like, I think I've got this. And yeah, it's what's his name? I'm just gonna check now. It's Dave. Dave Stevens, who obviously wrote it
yeah,
and drew it, and it's really good. Like it
yeah.
follows the film is very close to it, but the art in it and is excellent. And
I think especially for when it was made, it looks
yeah,
stunning. I don't know if they've recolored it or something.
no, apparently not. I checked this. I think they may have done not recently, at least. Um, but no, even his art, is very like ahead of its time. I wouldn't have
Definitely.
for 81. Um, it looks like it could have been released today. It's that good.
Yeah, I think
Um,
the only telltale is like the dialogue boxes.
mm,
Um, and there's nothing wrong with them. It's just you can tell that they're a bit bigger than they would be now or whatever.
yeah,
But yeah, the art's like spot on.
it,
It's
it is. It's
incredible.
fantastic. I mean, what's interesting as well is obviously it has its uh, inspiration. We'll get to it, when we talk about it. But like Cliff Secord is dating who is clearly supposed to be Betty Page because it's off that
Yeah.
the model. Um, didn't want to do that. Disney didn't want to do that for the film. um,
Well,
they
I
went.
think I've read they asked her to. They asked if they could use a name, and they
Mm,
said no. She said no.
oh, okay.
So I don't know if
Wow,
that's why. Could just
that's
be a rumor.
interesting. Yeah, that's a shame because it's quite interesting that she's obviously in there.
Yeah.
But we're gonna jump forward. We're gonna jump back a little bit first. So and this is still an interesting film. We'll start with Dick Tracy. But the
Yeah.
first thing I think I want to mention is why these films came about. Um, and I can only think of one thing, and I think it's Batman.
Yeah. It's sort of they all scream Batman, don't they?
Well, let's be honest. Both Darkman and Dick Tracy, the films we're going to speak about first, both have Danny Elfman doing the score.
Yeah.
He had a very, and if anything, with Warren Beatty, with Dick Tracy, he basically was like, "Yeah, I didn't use this one in Batman. Do you want it?"
Yeah. Yeah. That's. I mean, you can tell, can't you? Though, like it feels just like another city in the same world
Yeah, yeah.
almost.
So it's clear that the studios were like, "Oh, well, Batman's made an absolute fortune, and all this
Yeah.
merchandising, and all this other stuff. What heroes or what comic book characters can we use that we haven't got to pay for?"
Yeah. Like
Uh,
almost like these dark, and they try to make like they made, even though Dick Tracy's like super bright, it's
yeah,
got a certain darkness to it as well.
yeah. This film is incredible. So it's bizarre, is what it is.
Yeah.
So Dick Tracy from 1990, written, directed by Warren Beatty, and music by Danny Elfman, as we said. Starring Warren Beatty, aged 52 as Dick Tracy, Madonna as Breathless Mahoney, Al Pacino chewing up scenery left, right, and centre
Oh
is
man, yeah.
Big Boy Caprice, and then Gene Headley as Tess Trueheart, sort of like who was clearly about 20 years younger than Warren Beatty at the time.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's got isn't Gene Dustin Hoffman, sorry, in it as well.
Dustin Hoffman is Mumbles,
Yeah.
and this has got so many sort of like weird little cameos in. This sort of like I know him.
Yeah.
James Caan appears in it,
Yeah.
and at one point the guy who is Lips something or other is sort of like he also appears in The Rocketeer.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so
Because I watched this afterwards and I was like, sure I've seen him in something recently. And then looked it up and I was like, oh yeah, that'll be it.
But he also appeared in Goodfellas and stuff like that. So basically,
Yeah.
Warren Beatty was like, "I need this to feel like a gangster film," and then just looked at Scorsese films and was like, "Who can I take?"
Yeah.
The plot is really sort of basically the plot comes down to Warren Beatty is Dick Tracy, who's a detective on the police force, and Big Boy Caprice is taking over the crime sort of syndicate of the town, and he has to take him down.
Yeah.
And there's someone else, like a faceless antagonist, who's literally faceless, providing information to both sides, and sort of seems like they're playing the field a little bit, taking moving the plot on. But that's as simple as it gets, really, isn't it? I mean,
they add a few bits and bobs, don't they? Like you've got this kid.
Yeah, it's literally called The Kid.
The kid, yeah.
But it's
some sort of little sidekick.
Yeah, and again, it's that thing, isn't it? Of sort of like, right, we need kid friendliness for this. So there must be a child actor in it. And to be fair, he's not bad. The kid in this isn't too bad, actually. He's all right. What's weirder at this film is, as you say, it's bizarrely sort of like Technicolor and dark at the same time. Like,
yeah, it doesn't know where. Like, I don't know if it was trying to be something like original, or if it was just two people trying to do two different things, and they got caught in the middle. It's really hard to tell.
Well, there's a scene at close to the beginning, where Dick Tracy sort of follows the kid back to sort of like a shack. It's set in the 30s, so that, it's Depression era America, and he follows him back to this shack, and you find out that this guy's there who may or may not be the kid's father.
Where is it? It's like some sort of shanty house.
Yeah, in the middle of like a field, like it just sort of sits there. There's no others around it. It's just this one sort of like shack. But like you say, up until this point, it's been daylight. It's been quite day. He's wearing his yellow coat. All the sort of, the film literally starts. I'll get to that point, but it literally starts with a card game. It's gangsters playing cards, and you've got like the mad prosthetics, like one guy with a massive head, some guy with like, droopy ears. I'm like, what am I watching?
And it never really. It never really sits well. The faces, you never get used to it. No. I think the trouble, like part of the problem, is that there's celebrities under there. Yes. So you kind of know who they are, and you're like, why they look so horrible?
Yeah. What is this? Yeah. Why do they look like that? I don't understand it. But yeah, it's been really like Dayglow and weird, and then he gets to this shantytown after following the kid. And it follows up with him like literally just like kicking the crap out of this guy, and then basically trying to sort of like save the kid. But then once that's done, it sort of like pans out, and you see this sort of matte painting of the city. And again, it's done with sort of almost like glow in the dark day glow paint, but with a black background. And I'm thinking like Tim Burton influence on this is is all over it. But it pulls out the matte paint and then zooms in on another part of the matte painting for another scene, like another street scene, which is quite cool. I mean, some of the cinematography and stuff's cool. But the thing I thought about as well, watching this, and this is with hindsight, is really was A Dame to Kill For, and bloody hell, what kind of thing it was called? The Frank Miller's Sin City.
Yeah, Sin City. Yeah, of course.
This felt like an early kiddie version of Sin City.
Yeah. Somewhere a bit closer to the spirit, maybe.
Yeah, it's bizarre. But I quite enjoy it. I mean, what are your thoughts on sort of the way the film sort of opens and transition to it?
It is. I couldn't get over the visual strangeness of the characters. It's just never, like I say, it never sits with you, and you kind of like, eventually you get what the film is. Okay, I accept that they all look like terrifying freaks.
Yeah.
But then like it's like you've got this old guy running around in a yellow suit, like, and just all he seems to do is just arrest everyone, and then have to let them go. That's like the series. Of the start, at least, it's just like, you're under arrest. See you later.
Well, this is the thing, like, he doesn't actually seem, and this is one of the things I think you find with sort of films. He's not a great detective, is he?
No, they've not really thought through. They're just like, oh look, he is Dick Tracy. You get it, and that's that.
Yeah, like he's trying to take down a criminal gang, like an organized crime gang, but he seems to do it by basically wanting to rough people up. Like at no point does he sort of say, right, what evidence am I looking for of, criminal activity? I'm not even sure what criminal activity they do.
They just seem to exist.
Yeah, yeah.
And they're like, is there something about prohibition? It seems like he's got a speakeasy, which like Al Pacino's club
Yeah.
is the most underwhelming club
Yeah.
I've ever seen. I think it's just like some village hall
Yeah.
somewhere with three
It-
tables.
It's almost like they ran out of plot, and then they were getting to the set dressing of the club, and they were like, bollocks.
This is rubbish.
We've got a couple of white tablecloths that might look all right. But you're right, because I was sort of like, oh yeah, you just sort of accept that they're a criminal gang. But when I thought back on it, I was like, all right, they actually do kill some people. They do. But
Yeah.
I'm really not sure what they're trying to hide.
It's like all they're doing is killing each other.
Yeah. It's almost like, all right, we'll keep it within that bit. Do what you want,
Yeah, like you're basically doing our job for us at this point because
Yeah.
all you do is kill each other, and he doesn't even open his club.
No, he gets because the film ends at sort of like the grand opening of the club, doesn't it? That's the sort of where he takes the club.
I suppose he spends a lot of time slapping women up. Like Al Pacino just keeps like slapping Madonna every now and again.
Yeah. I mean, there's a great scene because Madonna sort of is the lead attraction or the lead singer of the club,
And it's
he
weird.
takes
The songs as well, aren't they? Stephen Sondheim.
yeah.
He wrote the songs for it. Which
Yeah,
is strange.
it is the whole thing's bizarre because they clearly don't fit Madonna.
No.
Like you'd think sort of like if you're going to get Madonna, who's sort of like a pop icon at this point, the 90s is sort of like her. This is her, prime.
It's like the height, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, you'd be thinking, right, you want to get her doing some really high energetic song or something a bit sort of like sexy or whatever. Nope.
No.
It's really sort of like run of the mill, really dowdy. It's bizarre sort of some of the club scenes. I mean, that's not to say that she's not okay in this. She's incredibly sexy, but again, the thing I find weird, again, this thing about tone is, it's day glow. It's sort of meant to be the 30s. It's meant to be sort of like, it's a PG, and then all of a sudden you've got a scene where she's in sort of like some almost see-through negligee trying to seduce Dick Tracy, and I'm like, wait a minute. This is falling into like Basic Instinct territory, and I'm feeling a little bit uncomfortable. This is supposed to be a kids' film.
The whole sort of her role in the film is strange. Full stop. I don't really understand why she's in love with him. I don't really understand why he falls for her. And it was like they didn't really want him to have a girlfriend in the film, but because of the history of Dick Tracy, Tess had to be there. And Warren Beatty was a bit like, oh, I just wanted to like make out with young hot pop stars, and now flipping.
I'm the director, I'm the producer, and I'm the star. I shall molest and harass whoever the hell I please. It is. But the thing is, like I say, in this film, like at the beginning of the film, she is obviously the attraction, and maybe you and I have missed something. Maybe this film's got a really deep meaning, we just don't know. But she's the attraction, like the main singer in this club. The club then gets taken over, and that seems to be her sole motivation for what she does in the film. Is like, I've been forced to work for a new boss, and you're sort of like, well, just move clubs. I'm sure that's a better way of dealing with this.
Yeah.
Because she I mean, the faceless person that is sort of like, feeding information and stuff to Al Capone's enemy, Al Pacino's big boy Caprice's enemies, which included Tracy, turns out to be Madonna's Breathless Mahoney. But
which I think probably on the second time you see the faceless character, I would say it's like, oh, that's clearly a woman. The voice change is a big clue.
Yeah, it's not well hidden, is it?
No, it just sounds like Princess Leia when she's in that disguise.
Yeah,
that's the same voice.
Yeah, but I'm not sure what her motivation is. Like, it doesn't make any sense.
No.
But again, like you say, it's clear. One of the things I would say is it's clear the cast are having an absolute whale of a time making this film. Like, nobody seems to care. Like, it's just mental.
And I think it definitely suffers from a fact that Al Pacino is the main villain, because I feel like Warren Beatty was just like, yeah, I love Al Pacino, and
Yeah.
just kept letting him do too much, to the point that it actually, like, there's nothing wrong with what you see, and I'm not saying like he's bad in it or anything, but there comes points where it's like, why am I watching him do this?
Yeah.
Why is it still going on? And he's like, it's him just being funny with his outfit on, but you're like, it doesn't help the story. It's just because it's Al Pacino that this is in it. Like, he was
Well,
too big for the role almost.
yeah, I know, I agree. It's almost like there are scenes in this that literally mirror Batman. There's a
Yeah,
scene where he has taken over the sort of like the crime gangs of this city, and so he calls all the others there to sort of like basically to throw his weight around and to sort of prove, to prove he's the boss. And you have James Caan in sort of like not where I noticed like James Caan's not wearing any prosthetics. They've just sort of given him a bit of a moustache and stuff, because I'm sure they were like, Mr. Caan, we want you to have this massive head on, and he's like, fuck you, I'm not doing that.
yeah,
Like he's the only person not wearing prosthetics in the room.
yeah.
And
I think he might have some, like, droopy ears or something.
yeah,
He's like, I'll wear the earlobes.
I'll wear an earring and maybe this. That's it. But like you say, like it's clearly a mirror of the same scene from Batman, and all I can think of is like Jack Nicholson's The Joker is just better. Although this is funny watching Al Pacino sort of like quite literally just like throwing his weight around and shouting. It's funny, but I'm thinking if you're going to stand up and compare, to try and compare yourself
Yeah,
to that film, like you're going to have to do something pretty special, and this just sort of falls short a little bit.
yeah. It is like in almost every respect the poor man's Batman.
Mm, yeah, I mean, even the end, even as it sort of it reaches its climax, you have sort of
Yeah, it's like instead of the clock tower, you've got some what inner workings of. I know there's cogs in it.
I think it's supposed to be a clock or a mill or
Is it a
something.
bridge or something? Isn't it
Oh, possibly, yeah,
like one of them lifting bridges?
yeah. But everything from sort of like the lighting to other bits and
Yeah,
pieces, like it very much feels like they're trying to go for that Tim Burton aesthetic. Um, But like again, this thing of like in the '89 Batman, like Batman clearly is not that bothered about killing people. It's just something that happens in that film. But
yeah.
neither is Dick Tracy. Like he's supposed to be a person of the law. But at the end of this film, and there are other times as well, he just runs into the street with a Tommy gun and opens random fire across a street.
That whole scene is just like just one car at a time getting absolutely laced
Yeah,
by bullets. And it's just like, why would you go out?
yeah. It's just but before that they've tried to paint, and this is why I find it so funny, is throughout the film they try and paint Dick Tracy to be like the Boy Scout. You know what I mean? He's meant to be sort of like he's meant to be
Yeah,
closer to Superman than he is to Batman, and they have him sort of like being like a mentor to the kid, and he's obviously guilty about the fact he can't give this Tess true heart a good life, can't settle down, all this other stuff. Like he shows this sort of remorse. And then the next thing, I'll have a montage of him beating the crap out of a witness.
yeah. I think there's definitely a difference in the way we view stuff like that now,
Yeah,
as to as how we did then. Because Batman is the same. There's a scene in Batman where like he like kicks a guy down a hole where there's a bomb,
yeah,
and then he like laughs at him, and he
yeah.
dies, and then he like doesn't he blow up an entire factory filled with criminals?
He does. Yeah, he blows up. He blows up. The Acme factory in the first one, like clearly filled with people, and then the
Yeah,
second one, he attaches dynamite to a fat clown and pushes him down a hole.
and I think there's something to do with. I've read before in times of like times of financial crisis. Apparently, Superman is more popular than Batman, and I think that's to do with the way we view criminals. So in fight like when it's financial crisis, we start looking at the sort of the richer as they're actually causing us problems. Their richness is
Yeah,
making us worse off. Whereas when we're all doing well, we're like, those low petty thugs need a beat down, so we're not bothered. So I think it reflects that the 90s were a pretty financially sound time, apparently.
yeah. Everyone was doing all right, so we're happy with thugs just being beaten up.
Yeah, But then
Um,
Man of Steel comes out, and then all of a sudden, no innocent can ever die in anything,
yeah,
and it just changes completely. Because I mean, how many superhero films since then have apologized
yeah.
for the Man of Steel, essentially?
But basically, yeah. I mean, what I find is in all of these films, um, there are scenes of wanton destruction of public property and complete disregard for anybody else being around.
Yeah,
Um, and all, so yeah, it is fun. I mean, it's a comic. The thing is, the one thing I would say is I do enjoy this film in the sense of like it is a comic book movie. Like
yeah.
it's bonkers. Um, and if
And
you're
it's
willing,
definitely of the bunch. It was, it's not the worst
no,
by
like
any stretch.
yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed sort of like if you could kick back and enjoy this if you sort of like these films, but
Yeah,
I can understand why if there was a I don't know how many there are, but I'm sure there are some like if you were a Dick Tracy purist or like you were a Dick Tracy
yeah.
fan or whatever, like I can imagine you watching this and being like, what is this? Um,
Whereas if you want to just see Al Pacino do an impression of himself, like some weird over the top impression of himself throughout a film, then this is it's going to be perfect for you.
yeah, this is almost like him parodying himself before he became a parody. This is sort of because I
Like
think it was
everyone's impression of him is this.
yeah, it's this and what's the other one? The with him and Keanu Reeves, where he's the devil without giving away spoilers.
Um,
The
the Devil's Advocate, is it?
Devil's Advocate, the lawyer
Yeah.
film. Like the end of that film is literally him shouting at Keanu Reeves for 20 minutes, and you're just like, got things to do. Can we roll it up, Al?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's an interesting film, and this is because the thing is, like I say, when I watched this as a kid, I remember watching this in the sort of early '90s on VHS or whatever,
Yeah.
and like you say, you don't know as a kid, you're like, I don't know who Al Pacino is or James Caan or Dustin Hoffman or any of these people. I'm just watching this like crazy film, thinking, yeah, this is
Yeah.
pretty good.
I think
But
you have a
no,
loose. I remember having I knew that Dick Tracy was an old thing,
yes,
so probably like my dad told me or something. But then you don't know anything other than that.
no, yeah, you just know it's a thing. I remember there may have been, you know, I
There
may
was
have seen it.
cartoons and stuff, weren't there?
I was going to say, I remember there was definitely a cartoon at some point around this time and that sort of thing. So you just enjoy the madness of it. But like I say, when you're older and you look back on it, and I'm sort of like, Dustin Hoffman plays a side character in this called Mumbles, who literally mumbles. And to be fair, he's probably one of my favourite parts of this film.
Yeah,
He's
it
really
like
good.
get some actual laughs, and his mumbles like actually sound like
Yeah.
funny. They're not just like, oh, that's just stupid, which it could so easily be with a character like that.
Yeah, I mean, they for some reason, like he spends a lot of the scenes with his trousers off when he's being interrogated, which he just sort of try not to ask too many questions. But one of my favourite scenes in this film is he's been mumbling the answer, and he thinks because he's mumbled it, like it can't be recorded. But to get him back, Dick Tracy just slows down the tape, and it basically becomes
Just his
perfectly.
voice.
Yeah, it just becomes Dustin Hoffman's voice. And I was like, that's amazing.
Modern technology,
That's it.
you
Yeah.
can't beat it.
Yeah. Um, so yeah, it's an interesting film. It's an interesting start to this whole thing. It's so, like you say, it stands in Batman's shadow so much,
Yeah,
but in the weirdest way. And because let's be fair, like Warren Beatty has directed other films, and some of them have had sort of critical recognition and stuff. So the studio clearly thought, right, this is the man for the job.
yeah.
Like he knows what he's doing, and then
Well,
they
didn't I
produced
think like
this.
he owns the rights to Dick Tracy,
Mm.
so I don't know if he just like bought them and was like, I want to do this. And at the
Yes,
time,
I think this may have been one of those fortuitous moments. Like he was clearly, this is a passion project for him, isn't it?
yeah,
And so to get to play Dick Tracy was clearly what he wanted. And I honestly think this is probably like I don't know how. probably only the third Warren Beatty film I've ever watched.
Yeah.
I think there's this Bonnie and Clyde, and then I think there is something else, but I can't even tell you what it is. So he was, but he was an icon at this point. But yeah,
it's not. It doesn't live up to the legacy.
It hasn't aged well, is what I would say. I mean, it's probably worth a revisit if you really want to look at, the progression of comic book films and stuff.
Yeah, and if you're interested in like pulp type, like the genre,
yeah,
it's an interesting middle ground between pulp, comic booky nonsense.
yeah. It's throwaway, isn't it? If you can find it on the stream, and if you can rent it for a couple of quid, it's probably worth seeing. But other than that, it's not amazing.
I read a little fun fact that Bruce Campbell wanted to do a Dick Tracy series, and he pitched it to Disney, and they were all pretty much, yeah, let's do this. But Warren Beatty said no because he's got the rights and he didn't want it made.
Oh wow. It clearly was a passion project. He's blocking it.
Yeah, he's not happy with anyone else touching it since.
Yeah, I'm not sure how a Bruce Campbell led Dick Tracy show would have worked either. To be fair,
just as strange.
Yeah. But what a great segue you've put right there, because using Bruce Campbell and obviously lead of the Evil Dead, we will jump forward then to November of 1990. And Sam Raimi's Darkman. So directed by Sam Raimi, starring Liam Neeson, Francis McDormand, and Larry Drake. I'm not even going to name anybody else because that's pretty much the important people in it. Again, music by Danny Elfman. Yeah. This again comes down to sort of like generic criminal bad person looking for certain things and with his gang members. Attacks a scientist lab, and Liam Neeson's Peyton Westlake is burnt and sort of disfigured beyond recognition, but has this fake skin or fake flesh that can last up to 100 minutes. But once it's done, it burns away, which gives him the ability to look like other people, both changing his height and body weight as well.
and voice often.
And voice, yeah.
I know you do see him practicing other voices, so
yeah,
he is just a master mimic.
Yeah. I included this one because it's clearly like a holdover from Batman, and Darkman is very much in that sort of pulpy vein of the darker, this is such a pulp film. Like it's
definitely. I mean, even you can tell he's trying to make that, isn't he?
Yeah. I mean, Darkman has got that silhouette, hasn't it? He's got like the shadow. He's got the big loose hat and sort of the draping overcoat. What I will say is, I know the poster for this better than the film.
Yes, yeah. Just the poster for this is better than the film.
Yeah, it promises things that clearly aren't in the film. But I remember, and I've still got comics from the sort of clearly from like 1990 and stuff, and 1991 when it came out on video. This was plastered over the back of comics. Like loads of Dark Horse and DC comics or Vertigo books have the Darkman poster on the back of them. And I just remember seeing this poster everywhere. But more than that, the video shop I sort of used to frequent when I was a kid had this as a standee, like as a big cardboard cutout.
So they really pushed it then.
Oh yeah, like for some reason I don't know what this sort of independent video shop. Maybe you got it cheap or something, but this independent video shop was just like, I'm big into Darkman and I'm going to really push it.
They were probably giving it, because I know when we had the comic book shop, all the stuff like that, we were just sent, like you got sent it with your orders and stuff.
Yeah.
So it might have been that they were like, this is out now, if you get the video in, we'll give you a standee.
Yeah. I mean, this feels like, where Dick Tracy was an adventure. Like, it's Dick Tracy on an adventure. This is an origin film, and it clearly sort of, the way it's set up throughout is, this was clearly supposed to be a franchise or a series.
Yes, yeah. and it's kind of it's weird because it's like there's so many things in this where you kind of expect it to go one way, and they just keep abandoning parts of their plot.
Yeah.
It just feels like someone kept wanting to make a different film in there or something.
Well, I think this when I watched this film back this time, what you're saying is exactly what I thought. I was like, but I think the tug is between Sam Raimi and the studio.
Yes, yeah, that's what it
Because that's
feels like.
yeah. This is clearly like Sam Raimi is going to make his bonkers sort of pulp superhero film, and the studio said, but we want sequels, so
We want Batman.
yeah, we want people to come and see this.
Uh,
And so he does sort of like some bits where you go, well, that's clearly a studio. The whole thing of him sort of trying to get back with Frances McDermott and stuff, you can
yeah,
see that he's like, okay, that's the love interest and all that kind of stuff. And every time he does that, you can almost feel sort of like Raimi sort of like pushing against it.
yeah,
And then when he's let off his leash, he's sort of like, right, I'm going to do something absolutely mental now.
yeah, and it's I think the biggest thing when I was watching it, and I was just like, I don't know why they've added that, and it's like almost the perfect setup for the character and done absolutely nothing with it. Is
Yeah.
that this skin he wears, this whatever it is, it only melts in the light. There's a big thing about that at the start.
Yeah.
Which I was like, oh, so that's why he's called Darkman, because when he can basically do what he wants at night. So he only goes out in the dark. That would make sense.
Yeah.
But then
The whole
they
film
never touch on it again.
Yeah. Well, more than that, the whole film is then shot in the daylight.
Yeah.
The film starts in that sort of dark manner. It does have some scenes of,
Yeah.
and when he sort of he is blown up. I mean, what I would say is that there's a section of this film which I kind of enjoy.
Yeah,
Is it starts quite well, and then when he's attacked at the science lab and all this other stuff, like it's really sort of silly and stuff. And from the tone of the film, it's not supposed to be taken seriously. Like it is ridiculous. But then when he's in hospital for some unknown reason, like I've never seen this be a part of a burns
Oh,
victim's
recovery.
recovery. He's on some sort of like rotating wheel thing.
Like Vitruvian Man.
Yeah, I was like, is that to help blood flow? Like they never address it. At no point do they say. And we
all
put
they
him on
do
this
is
thing.
like, oh, he can't feel anything, so let's stab him a load of times. Like,
Well, that was the thing I thought was hilarious. She's like, the way we've dealt with this, because there's no way of preventing the pain. It's basically we've severed the nerves. Look, he doesn't feel pain, and then shoves a scalpel in him. And I was just like, yeah, but
like really wangles it in there as well, doesn't she? Like,
but all I can think is like, he may not feel it, but you literally just stabbed him. Like he's still going to bleed. Like,
oh my life.
It was hilarious. So that bit, I was like, okay, now I know what film I'm in.
Yeah.
But when he escapes from the hospital, and sort of he falls out into the street, and it's raining, and it's all like the alley is like literally a foot deep in water, and he's got his raincoat on top. I'm like, that looks kind of
river.
But that sort of part of the film, when he sort of like stalks across the street and he's all disheveled, that part looks kind of cool. I was like, all right, this is it. The film's going to be all dark and it's going to be at night and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
And as you say, it after that, it's all in the daytime.
It's so bizarre.
Yeah,
he never settles into it. That's another problem with it. He's always angry about it, which is part of his, that's what makes him super strong, is super rage. But you never get the chance to be like, right, he is Darkman now.
Well, not until the very end of the film. Like it's literally the last thing. I can't be with you. I've got to leave. I am Darkman. But yeah, like you say, he never feels like he's comfortably gone, okay, that's the life I've got to lead.
Yeah.
Because and the way that what thing is, so he's pronounced dead because they just assume he's dead because they can't identify him because he's so disfigured apparently. So they have a funeral for him, but then he turns up to see his she's called Julie Hastings in the film, Frances McDermott, but at no point is he like subtle or anything about it. He literally just wanders up and he's like, I'm back. You know, hello. I'm really sorry it's taking me so long to get back to you. Shit's happened. And she sort of seems to come to terms with it really quick. Thinking, I'll be like, I've been grieving about your death for days.
And then, yeah, she's even like got a boyfriend
Yeah.
who
Moved
is the
on
guy
fast.
that, like, some like well dodgy guy that's been doing dodgy deals with the mafia, which she knows about.
It's clearly like she's moving on quickly. And then because the thing is, then because that's all in the daylight. You know, it's not even raining or anything. So you know the typical they do keep away from some of the typical tropes maybe, and maybe that was the point. But it just doesn't work because they then go on a date. And
He starts like getting all weird, doesn't he?
yeah. But that's where I start to sort of I'm watching my watch. I'm literally looking at my watch going like, all right, the date's gone a bit much. But it does have the moment where he goes, like you said, he gets his super rage when he is he shooting or is he throwing a ball at like a thing? I can't
Yeah,
remember.
he's throwing a ball at some
That's it.
cans or something,
Yeah,
and he knocks them over, but they won't give him the prize.
it hits them and they won't fall over, isn't it? So he's been
Yeah,
cheated. So he goes into like a mad rage, and it's sort of like almost like sped up, and you get you know
yeah,
taken level Liam Neeson attacking a bloke.
in like 1.5 speed.
Yeah. And they have all these sort of like weird effects to show how much rage he's got. Like they zoom into his eye and all this other bits and pieces.
Yeah, we see like fire in the background, and
Yeah,
it looks like something you'd see now on a comedy show.
exactly. That's exactly what I thought. I was like, this is sort of sitcom level sort of a way of doing it. I mean, it's clearly sort of Sam Raimi doing what he does
Yeah,
best. Um, and then sort of like you say, then his skin starts to bubble and he has to run away and all this other stuff. And it's all at no point, as you say, like at no point does it ever settle into its groove. This film sort of doesn't never really settles into its groove. Like I'm never even entirely sure it's supposed to be a revenge film because he then takes on Larry Drake as Durant, like the criminal leader.
whose like face is actually made of rubber in real life, apparently.
Yeah, the least
Strange looking
like
bloke.
the least emotive man in Hollywood. But again, like the plot for this, like this whole revenge piece, there's like there's a countdown, there's a clock because, and you think it's going to lead to something like quite spectacular, but the whole point is that he got a photo of himself and stuff, but it was damaged. So they tried to get like a 3D rendering of his head, doesn't he? So he can do this flesh. But it's going to take so many hours, which I think was about 24 days. Okay, so he's got a month to put all his plans in place and do all this other stuff. And basically, he steals the money to sort of fund his science and all this other stuff. You think, fine, okay, that makes total sense. But then they say none of this really goes anywhere. It just sort of it just sort of happens.
It's just but that's like with everything in the film. Like every scene is just something that happens until the end. It's just like I don't know. It's really hard to just not stay focused, but stay interested.
Yeah.
In the entire piece.
And I think they sort of know that because again, I'm trying to sort of think like how do we describe this film? What do we talk about for this film? Because we should be. Could we analyze this? Is there anything to talk about? There is nothing to this film.
No, and again, like I think there's a couple of them are Universal films, aren't they?
Yeah.
And I do feel like they're just trying to find their Batman.
Yeah.
And Universal have kind of never really had their franchise since the monster movies, and they keep trying to get a superhero. I think they were like, we've got the Hulk now, and then they that didn't work out. They've got this. They tried to do their monster movies as a universe, didn't work out, and this feels like that again.
Is the Fast and Furious Universal?
That's Warner Brothers, I think.
Is it Warner Brothers?
Yeah.
So Universal never really had that sort of franchise.
No, I think they had early franchise. Like they had the first, like the monster movies, which was obviously the first real movie franchise where they sort of crossed over. So you've got like
Yeah,
Frankenstein and
yeah.
Dracula or whatever, the
I mean,
werewolves, and the first Avengers.
yeah, yeah. Basically, I'm literally having a look now to because I'm interested for Universal. I've just typed into Google Universal franchises, and my God, you are so right. I mean, this is given to the A to Z of everything they've ever done.
Yeah,
Um,
I know
and
they've done loads of amazing standalone movies.
yeah, oh no, Fast and Furious is Universal,
Oh, is it? Oh, apologies then.
but but that's about it. Um,
Yeah. Well, I bet they were glad.
yeah, they've got some interesting stuff. Yeah, so because this film sort of like leads to again like this guy's he's called Darkman, and it's clearly like they've gone that's a cool name.
Yeah,
And worked from that premise and worked backwards. You've got this whole thing about the flesh, and he does use it a couple of times. Like he does it to look like himself, and then he does it to look like a couple of the gangsters,
the
so
gangsters,
so he can steal their money. Which again, sort of like that's quite cool because he looks like Durant at one point, and he looks like this other gangster. But as you say, it's sort of so. Go on.
It's pretty hilarious when the two Durants meet. That
Yeah,
did crap me up. That
yeah,
I don't think it was supposed to, but that whole scene is just like
yeah,
shut it, and they're in that flipping whirly door.
yeah, yeah. But that's the point. Like, I'm not sure if this is supposed to be a comedy.
No, but
There's
that again, that is like classic Sam Raimi, isn't it?
yeah,
Like
it,
like Evil Dead 1.
yeah.
Like, is this? Sometimes it's horrible. Sometimes I think it's funny. I don't know.
No, it's it. Like there are moments in this, like you say, that you think you do think to yourself, like, is this supposed? Am I supposed to laugh? I'm laughing. Does Sam Raimi want me to? I don't know. Is it? Is it what? What's the point? Um, yeah, because there are moments that are quite fun in that point, but the ending when they sort of all come to get him and they go to his sort of he's set himself up in a factory, hasn't he? As a sort of
Yeah, it's like
his
his hideaway
his
lair.
dark his dark cave. Uh, but he when they attack, like that's when it goes all out. Like they've clearly gone like, right, we've got an awful lot of budget left. Could we borrow a helicopter? And they've gone, yeah, we can get you a helicopter. Great, we want to use a helicopter. Um,
that entire helicopter scene is just
yeah.
it's pretty hilarious how he destroys it.
Well, yeah. Well, it starts.
You
It's
imagine.
no, because it starts with it starts with the fact they attack, and he's sort of like he's got his super rage, so he's sort of taking people on left and right, and he uses the masks. I mean, there are a couple of bits towards the end where you think that's quite clever. So there's one point where it's he uses a mask and someone comes over, they get shot, and then they pull off one mask, and it's like it looks like Liam Neeson underneath, and then they pull it off, and it's there's like he's basically got two masks on him and this sort of stuff. So there's a couple of bits like that where I'm like, that's quite good fun, and the
Yeah.
fight, and then him running away, and then you get Durant with like a massive machine gun, opening fire across the top of this sort of warehouse thing in downtown Los Angeles, basically.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, like, all right, we've got troubles with the police at the moment, but clearly, like, no one was paying attention to what the hell was going on in this. No.
No one cared at all. Whatever. This is Durant's just untouchable at this point.
And then you get sort of something which may or may not have inspired the Matrix, but he gets stuck on a hook and they fly around the city for a little bit. It's
Yeah, and just it's when like he hooks it onto a truck, doesn't he?
yeah.
And this is like and then it goes under a bridge. But when that helicopter hits the bridge, that is like pure laugh out loud comedy gold.
Yeah. But it's like up until this point, there's obviously this isn't the finale. There's more, but you clearly think like, oh, Durant's been the main villain, like he's surely supposed to be the real baddie. But the way they kill him, you're a bit like, oh, all right.
But yeah, that's that.
Yeah. So credits then, I assume.
Yeah. But no, you've got flipping Captain Beams a lot, climbing
Yeah,
his rusty rails on top of a skyscraper.
yeah. This bit is it's luckily it's dark, so at least
Yeah,
it's
the
at
first
night.
night scene in the movie.
Yeah. Um, and it's yeah, so it's you find out that basically the guy that sort of Francis McDermott's been seeing or whatever has been involved with is basically a scumbag, and has been dealing with the sort of like the criminals and all this other stuff. And it's to do with this idea of property, isn't it? It basically comes down to I'm building all these, and you've got to basically bribe people to make it happen. That seems to be about it. Um, and so again, like you're saying, like I'm not sure what you're trying to do with this film. Like, you've had gangsters, now you've got like dodgy businessmen and stuff. Like it's all a little bit all over the place.
Yeah,
Um, and then you get basically a fight on girders, which lasts again a bit longer than it really should do.
yeah. There's just a lot of whoa,
Yeah,
nearly
yeah,
falling off, and you just kind of like, I just want this to finish.
yeah.
And
Because
even
it's not.
that's a bit like the ending of Batman.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. But even that shot, like they've got it's, and this is where I would ding Raimi for this. If you're going to try and prove that they're up high on a building, or at least on girders on a construction site, you would do it by zooming out and showing how high up they are.
Yeah,
But at no point does it ever go past like a mid shot where you're like, "Oh yeah, we're on girders, just so you know, but we're not going to
yeah,
show you much more. We're clearly no more than 3 feet off the ground."
yeah. That's the trouble in it, and you. I think by this point though, you just kind of don't care.
Yeah,
That's the trouble with it, innit? You're just like, oh, okay, whatever.
no, yeah. I mean, the ending, he's obviously presented. Francis McDormand sees his real face, and she's like, "We can work with it. All you've got to do is wear a mask," which I think's, I think it's supposed to
Terrible
show.
messages.
Yeah, I think it's supposed to show she's accepting, but I'm thinking like, you really are a bitch. You're like,
Yeah,
I can't live with you
but
being that hideous.
I don't know them teeth. He's got
Yeah.
like lip teeth that just are so upsetting to look at.
Well, yeah, and that's one of those things I find hilarious because it's one of those things in films that when you talk, you form words by moving your lips.
Yeah,
If you don't have lips, you struggle to talk. So there are times when they're trying to show those teeth. I mean, the makeup's pretty. I will be admit the makeup's pretty good in this for the Darkman
yeah.
stuff. Like, it
It
looks good.
was basically just the teeth.
Yeah,
I just
um,
couldn't. They look so unconvincing.
yeah. They sort of chatter up and down, don't they? And you're sort of like, it doesn't kind of work.
It's like you didn't need to do that.
Yeah. But yeah, it just sort of like at the end, he sort of says, "Well, I can't be with you. Basically, move on. I'm sorry I pulled you into this. Basically, move on. I am Darkman," and then becomes Bruce Campbell in
Bruce
the
Campbell,
crowd.
and then goes on to get a successful detective's career in the LSE.
Yeah, I mean that's sort of. I mean, the thing is, it'd been a Raimi film. That's the sort of like the required Bruce Campbell.
Yeah. And it's almost
Cameo.
it's one of those things where you're kind of waiting for it. I don't know if maybe at the time it wasn't as jarring a thing, but when at the end you're kind of like, oh look, there he is, and then it
Yeah.
ends. And it
Well,
kind
it's
of
one.
ruins that final moment.
Yeah, it's funny because I don't think it would have paid off in that way in
No, at the time.
1990 because he would no one would have known who he was. But I also obviously the yellow. I can't remember it's like I don't know if it's a Ford or whatever, but the typical car, the Evil Dead car, the yellow car, also appears in the film at one point when Darkman is sort of like dipped onto the freeway on his
Oh,
hook. And he bounces off the car, and you're sort of like, "Oh, there's the car. That's the sort of the Sam Raimi car."
yeah.
So yeah, it's funny because watching this, I would have been like, "Don't let Sam Raimi near superhero films; they're terrible."
I know, but it must be how he got the flipping Spider-Man job.
That's all I can think of. Like, did someone not see this and be like, "Yeah, I don't know," because someone at Sony has obviously gone, "I've seen this great film. I want to get this director in." I tell you what, he knows what he's talking about when it comes to superhero films.
He made one of his own.
Yeah, that's it. He made one up.
This guy wore masks, and the makeup was so good it looked like his real face.
Yeah. I don't know how he managed it. So well done to Sam Raimi for going on to make Spider-Man 1 and 2, and we won't talk about 3, but it's not as bad as people say. But yeah, I mean, he went on to make those films pretty well. But if you read If Chins Could Kill, or If Chins Could Talk, sorry, the Bruce Campbell biography, he talks about this in this
Really?
film. Yeah, so he obviously knew that he was going to be in the film.
Yeah.
They'd said, obviously, because it's just Sam and Raimi had obviously contacted him and said, like, yeah, you come on down. I've got a part for you. It's just If Chins Could Kill. I've got a part for you. Just come on down. It'll be like 10 minutes work. But what he would do is apparently sort of Bruce Campbell would go down on set with some of the other guys that he worked on, like the Evil Dead series with, because they were lobbying at this point. They were lobbying to get cash to make Army of Darkness.
Right.
So they were sort of working on that, and apparently, sort of in that book, Bruce Campbell does sort of say it was a bit mental, like Sam Raimi, because he was sort of apparently sort of had disputes with the studios and stuff over a few other things, but he was trying to keep them sweet because he was looking to see if he could still get the studio to let him make Army of Darkness. So apparently there are scenes that aren't seen in the film where he was just going like, just do what you want, basically. You ad lib, go crazy or whatever. So there's all kinds of stuff apparently that sort of never made it, even into the special features. Which I think I'd
So
like to
he
see.
kind of like sacrificed the film almost to get Army of Darkness in a way.
A little bit, apparently. Yeah, apparently that may have been the case. Because I love Army of Darkness. I think that's a great film. And it's funny that comes out in 91, I think.
Right.
And so it's sort of like it was made shortly after this, and that is a much more coherent film. So it is almost like a case. It's like, look, I've made this film. You've paid me. Can I move on and do
Well,
my
I
thing?
mean, he's not a bad director, is he?
No,
He's
not
made,
at all.
he's made good films, so
Yeah, this is a
I
bit
mean,
of
he
a
has
blip on
made
his
bad
radar.
films. He's made bad films as well, but
Yeah, I mean the other thing is we should say is Dick Tracy didn't get a sequel. Darkman got
yeah,
2 of them.
which is beyond bizarre.
Yeah. Well, I almost when sort of looking to sort of watch these films for this recording, I was like, oh, should I? You can get there's a triple box set. You can get all 3 of the films. I was like, it's like 15 quid. And I was like, should I get it? Do I really want to see those films? And I was like, do you know, I don't.
Yeah, you'd have been gutted after you watched the first one and thought,
Yeah.
oh,
I think they're called. I think it's Darkman 2, The Return of Durant, and Darkman 3, Die Darkman Die.
oh man, that is genuinely something from a flipping comedy.
Yeah, they're the kind that's the kind of poster you'd have in the back of in the background of a sort of like a comedy film, wouldn't it?
Yeah, like the Simpsons would have it in their video shop.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what it like. So the fact there is a film called Darkman 3, Die Darkman Die. I'm like, yeah, that shouldn't, but that should not exist in our reality. That should belong in somewhere else.
That is fiction only. Thank you.
Yeah, maybe if you watch it, it just sort of like someone pops up and says, "There's not actually a film. We just wanted to use the title." So,
because no one's watched it, so no one.
yeah, no one knows. Yeah, because no one's ever looked at it. So that's Darkman, which I think we can both sort of agree is probably not worth revisiting.
No, this was like one of the lowest at the pile for me. I was very much like it was the last one I watched, and I was like, I'm glad that this is over now. I can't do any more.
Yeah, I was really disappointed because I remember the poster being so cool, and I was thinking like, this is Sam Raimi film. I'm sure this is going to be sort of like some weird indie kind of dark horror.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, it's like it's like a hidden gem type film.
Yeah, I thought like, am I going to come out of this lauding this and saying now people should go check it out and it's a lost gem? It's not.
Not at all.
No, it's been lost to history and probably should stay there. A year later, though, Disney jump into the fray And as we sort of mentioned before, this is obviously based on a graphic novel written by Dave Stevens, and that's The Rocketeer, released in August 1991, directed by Joe Johnston, who went on to direct the first Captain America film.
Yeah, and
Captain
this is
America:
how he
First
got the
Avenger.
job, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. So Joe Johnston is a good friend of Steve Spielberg, and also has done other stuff with Disney. Obviously, between this and Captain America.
Yeah,
But it's funny because I mean I really like. I'm a bit of a Marvel shield, to be fair. I quite like most of the Marvel films, but I
yeah,
really enjoy First Avenger. I think it's people sort of like poke fun at it and stuff,
yeah.
but
No,
I
I
think it's really
agree. I think like I mean, it kind of suffers from the effects aren't particularly dated, like which
yes.
is you forget how old they are, I suppose now. But yeah, and it kind of rushes bits. But overall, there's definitely worse Marvel films out there, like
Oh yeah,
easy.
definitely. But you can sort of see, go back and watch The Rocketeer, and you can see so much of why he got that job.
Yeah,
um, but basically the story is Cliff Secord is a stunt plane um, professional. He does it as part of sort of the flying circus kind of deal. And one day, his hangar is sort of like two guys being chased by the police run into his hangar and hide a jetpack, a secret military jetpack, in the sort of part of his plane. They're taken in. It turns out they are German spies. But then to make money, Cliff uses the jetpack in the circus, ends up saving somebody's life, and then basically goes on to become sort of like the jetpack wearing superhero that is the Rocketeer, and takes on Nazis. So this has got this sort of, again, this has got almost a direct lineage to Indiana Jones and
yeah,
Captain
and
America and all that
that's
kind of
what because
stuff.
I know Disney wanted their own Indiana Jones, didn't they?
Yes.
That was why they sort of pushed this. So what's good about it, straight off the bat, is that it doesn't feel like Batman.
No, it's like the opposite tone.
Yeah. So
um,
you'd want a Superman film like this, maybe.
it's funny you
Or
say that because this felt like that Superman the movie, like the start of Superman the movie where he's on the farm
yeah,
and he's a kid. Like it has that sort of like um, down home sort of more sort of wholesome feel to it, which is clearly
yeah,
Disney.
like a cornflakes advert, like an old Kellogg's advert.
Yeah, yeah. That's a really good. I mean, the thing is, I was saying this is like the cast in this film as well is. I mean, you got Billy Campbell as Cliff Secord, who's a bit of a no name. I don't really think he did much more.
This was his first. This was his first role, I think. That
Oh,
first big
really?
role.
But
Yeah, and he apparently when he had auditioned for it, he basically read the book before,
yeah,
and then just went to the barbers, said, "Cut my hair like this," and
yeah.
then turned up looking as much like him as he could.
He does a good job. I mean, he looks the part, and
Yeah,
he's got that sort of, he's got that sort of cheeky but chiseled sort of look,
yeah,
and I think he's quite good in this. I enjoy him.
yeah, yeah,
Um, but the other ones like Jennifer Connelly is
yeah,
Jenny. Should have been Betty Page, and she's very good in it. Um,
yeah,
to me, though, the two stands out is Alan Arkin as Peavy,
yeah,
like his best man engineer, and Timothy Dalton as Neville Sinclair, playing the thing this brings to mind is firstly because I actually really like Timothy Dalton's Bond, so he's playing like the anti-Bond.
yeah,
But watching this, all I could think about was Hot Fuzz.
yeah. Like this is like the character before Hot Fuzz, like what he
Yeah,
did with where he got it.
yeah. Um, and it's just, and again, like the guy, it's got sort of like, this has got atypical sort of 30s gangsters in it. It's got a heavy-handed thug,
Yeah,
and I forget the
which
guy's
is
name.
like that bit is a really bizarre. Like this guy is like a character from Dick Tracy. Like he's got the makeup.
Yeah. Do you know what
Which
he is? Do you know who he is?
he's what in real life or the character?
No, where he came from, where that character came from.
Yeah, he's in one of the stories, isn't he? He's like from the circus that
Yeah.
in the
More than that,
books.
though. So more than that, though, he is based on a real person.
Right. Okay.
And I cannot remember for the life of me. I cannot remember, but there is an award named after him, and I can't remember what it's bloody called. I'll have to find out at
Well,
some
sorry, you
point.
just got out a little bit.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So there was an award based on this guy. So he was an actor in the 30s and 40s that had this sort
Okay.
of like this disfigurement. He was gigantism, like the guy who played Jaws in
Yeah.
the Bond films, a bit like that. And so they had this award for him, and he's become a bit of a known thing. And he plays all these like heavies in gangster films and stuff. So, so that's why Dave Stevens put him in the book, and obviously he then translated into the
Right.
film. So,
Okay. Yeah.
um, that's why he's there as a bit of a sort of a hangover of that. But he does,
Well, what's interesting as well, like because you can tell that they've actually like thought this film through.
yes,
Because Timothy Dalton's character is based on Errol Flynn, isn't it?
yes,
And there was also rumours that he was a Nazi spy.
there is. It was a Nazi sympathiser allegedly. I'll add
Yeah,
that in.
so that's where he based his character, because his character's not in the books, is it?
There's a sort of a similar character who's not. It's not called Neville Sinclair. There's a sort of a towards the end. There's a similar character that sort of they've clearly gone. That character becomes a lot more emphasised for the film. But yeah, they've definitely
Yeah,
thought about it.
yeah, and it just feels a bit more a straight away. Like this film, I actually quite enjoyed. Actually,
I love this film. Hey, I've
yeah,
just found the guy's name. Here you go. So the original actor, if you ever want to find out, look for Rondo Hatton. That's the guy's name, Rondo
right,
Hatton. And he was an actor. I'm going to do a bit of work. Am I right? Rondo Hatton Awards. Yeah. So the Rondo Hatton Classic Horror Award, basically. But you can see images of him when you look at that. But yeah, so he was an actor. So from the era. Um, and did all these sort of like pulpy horror films and gangster films. But yeah, I agree. I think this film's a lot better thought through. I
yeah,
think I mean, the one thing I would say about all of these films compared to modern comic book films is they're all less than 100 minutes.
yeah.
Like
Which is something that it's not so bad when you're watching them
no.
now, kind of made.
Yeah, I was quite glad that Darkman was less than that. There's about 90
Yeah,
minutes. But it moves at a hell of a clip. I mean, they don't. This film never sort of rests.
no,
The Rocketeer, and it's a bit like for me, Disney hit a bit of a peak around this period. I mean, you get in sort of the animation is back on track. Early
yeah,
90s. You've had the Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast was 1990. They're about to, I think 91 is Aladdin. They're about to release The Lion King. So, they're really working on all cylinders. So 91, you've got The Rocketeer. You're about to get
yeah.
The Three Musketeers with Kiefer Sutherland. They really are working at peak performance at this point.
Yeah, well, they had like I think it was in the 80s, like maybe the late 80s. They had two guys take over. I cannot remember their names for the life of me, but it was after a particularly low point, and these guys basically brought it back like from the brink
Mm.
and started making just loads. So the parks became popular again, the animations became popular again, their films were better, and it was just like success after success.
Yeah, it
Um,
shows. I mean,
yeah,
there's just this thing of like, this is a quality product.
yeah,
It feels well together, and it's got that tone of this is a sort of a family adventure film. Like this isn't Dick Tracy where I'm going to feel a little bit uncomfortable if Madonna starts
yeah,
getting her boobs out or something. This film's it's even considering that Jennifer Connelly's supposed to be Betty Page, who was obviously a glamour model and stuff. It touches on that briefly, but
yeah. There's like
really,
one shot where they just pan the camera down and just stare at her boobs strangely,
yeah.
and then but other than that, you're kind of pretty much safe.
Yeah, and it's I mean, it's got a good message in it. It's got a relatively it's got good humor.
Yeah,
It's a well made film. I mean, the scenes just spring into my brain when I think about it. Like when he first when he saves the old guy in the plane at the at the fair and stuff, and first
Yeah.
time we see the Rocketeer and stuff. I mean, like you said, the special effects probably don't stand up as well as they could do.
No, but it's not as jarring as some of the other films
Yeah.
at the same time. And I think, like, I suppose it's similar to Superman, isn't it? The old Superman films
Mm.
probably didn't stand up as well, though. To be honest, I will say that. But I know they had certain things that they worked on for this. So when they're in the Zeppelin at the end,
Yeah.
Disney made like their own contraption that was basically the reverse of a steady cam, called a shaky cam,
Right.
so that they didn't have to have anything moving and stuff. So like they created that for it, but then apparently they had to take the effect off because it
Make people
didn't
feel
work.
sick. Okay. People
It
feel
didn't work
seasick.
for VHS, I think.
Okay. Well, that'd be interesting to see it on the big screen and see that work differently. Yeah, because it does. It's like I say, I think this film looks great.
Yeah,
There are scenes in this that are really the good thing of this film is like I say because he's supposed to be Errol Flynn, the was it the Neville Sinclair character.
yeah,
When they get him involved, like the sets become so sort of elaborate at times. Because you've basically had up until now it's been a bit of a cowpoke, hasn't it? You've had like a hangar and a field and a bit of a
yeah,
bar or a bit of a cafe. So like it's not a huge shell out. But then they have to build a set like a movie set for him to be on like a 30s swashbuckling film, and then you get
yeah.
sort of a nightclub scene in his apartment. It's got like a hidden door and stuff. And so, yeah, none
That's
of
what I
that
mean.
CG. It's all there.
Compare the nightclub in this to
Dick Tracy.
Al Pacino's
Yeah,
Friendly Joint.
yeah,
It's unbelievable, really.
yeah. It is, isn't it? I mean, that's where this film has scope, and I think sort of it pays off.
I think you find this with Disney. They've got quite a few like big budget films that have flopped
Mm.
for whatever reason, but when you actually watch them, it's like actually this is half decent. Like I'm surprised. I'm
Yeah.
surprised that people didn't watch it.
Well, I find that with sort of like the Disney live action films. Forget these animation remakes. Sort of where they're remaking their
Yeah,
animated films. Forget all that because that sort of comes with sort of like built-in cash appeal.
yeah,
But I feel, I think, and hopefully they'll get refound on like Disney Plus and stuff. But
yeah,
and I'm not talking about the sort of the '60s ones, like, but even some of them like the Herbie films, stuff like that. But these ones from the '90s, like I say, I love the Three Musketeers with
yeah.
was it it's like Keith Sutherland, Charlie Sheen, Oliver Platt, Chris O'Donnell.
It's Jeremy Irons is in it as well.
No, that's the Man in the Iron Mask. But you
Oh
got
right, yeah, of
Tim.
course.
You get which is like a sequel to it. But you get Tim
Yeah,
Curry as Richelieu. It's just wonderful that film.
yeah.
But like no one ever talks about them.
No, well, it's like they've got newer ones as well. Like John Carter was a massive flop. The Lone Ranger.
Yeah, I love, but
Um,
I love both of those films.
yeah, and they are like it's easy to just be like, oh yeah, those films like make fun of them, but then you watch them and you're like, actually, this is good. I don't
Yeah,
understand why it didn't do well.
The Lone Ranger's slightly different. I mean, casting Johnny Depp as a Native American Indian was probably a bit of a misstep.
Yeah, and it was too much like, oh, we need another Pirates.
Yeah,
Like a
there is that part of it, but I think we're getting off on a whole different tangent. But it's a similar thing, like those pulp adventure films. But both John Carter and Lone Ranger are both worth seeing. I mean, they're a bit longer. They're both of them are over 2 hours and stuff. But yeah, I recommend both of those. But they fit into this thing with this sort of with the Rocketeer.
Yeah, definitely. And like the Rocketeer is from that same wheel because this was a flop as well, wasn't it?
Mm,
And
yeah,
it's such a shame because it's a really good film.
it really is. I mean, when you find out that I'm going to spoil the crap out of it. When you find out that Neville Sinclair is sort of is a Nazi, and it's sort of, I mean, what's the film's like? Bloody was 90, so it's almost 30 years old now. So if you haven't seen it, tough. But when it's revealed that he's a Nazi, there's this whole thing of like he's been paying off gangsters, hasn't he, to do his deal, to do his dirty work for him. And then when it's revealed he's a Nazi, and the gang is like, kill them. And he's like, I might be a criminal, but I'm still an American, and I'm going to
Yeah.
deck. And so the gangsters sort of side with the Rocketeer. It's like it's
It's
yeah,
one of them things. It's like so stupid, but at the same time, you're like, oh yeah, like you didn't
yeah.
think that.
Yeah, one of the things I do find hilarious is because the end is always in these films ends in a bit of a shootout and a punch 'em up, and it's on a zeppelin, which is great. I mean, I always love a zeppelin in a film. There's not enough
Yeah,
zeppelins in modern films, um, but one thing where it's sort of there's been silly moments in this film, but it's all been within the sort of the realms of what I would say would be acceptable within this world. Like you've sort of set out its
yeah, yeah.
rules, and I'm like, I'm accepting that. That's fine. I'm going to accept all the rules of this film. And then at the end, the one thing I don't accept and I really struggle with is when Sinclair does reveal himself to be a Nazi. All of a sudden, Nazi stormtroopers start bursting out the trees. I'm just like,
And it's just like, what? Why,
yeah,
why did he need why did he need the mafia on his
that's right.
side?
That's what I kept thinking. I was like, why did he hire these people? He's got an army.
Yeah, I
Um,
don't know. Yeah, you just have to kind of take it as maybe they've just arrived on the blimp.
Yeah.
I guess.
So there's a couple of moments like that you're a bit like, what? But apart from that, like, this film's great. I mean, it has an actor I recognise, but I can never remember his name, who has appeared in things like everything from like Lost to a whole bunch of other things, playing
Oh
Howard
yeah,
Hughes.
he's John Locke in Lost.
That's it, yeah.
Yeah,
And so it's one of those films where throughout it, because they're all a lot younger, but you go, oh, I know him. Oh, I know that
yeah,
person too. Um, it's full of that. Um,
yeah,
But yeah, so it sort of it has this thing of sort of because Howard Hughes built the jetpack or designed the jetpack, and he sort of says he lets him have it sort of thing. Um, and yeah, so the end on this sort of like the Zeppelin stuff is really good though. They fight on
yeah.
top of the Zeppelin, they fight in the cabin, they do this, they do that.
You've got your massive lunk fighting him on top as well.
Yeah,
It never feels like oh bloody hell, just flipping. Who's the villain here as well? It's like the opposite of the ending for Darkman, basically.
mm. Yeah, it is. And again, like this film provides scope. I mean, there's a scene of, I mean, you get to see him fly as well, which is really cool. Like and again, the effects aren't always great, but I'm with it because again, they've built a world, they've built the rules, and I'm buying
Yeah,
into it, so I'm quite comfortable with it all. Um, and there's a great shot, like it's actually the shot from the front cover of the original graphic novel,
yes, yeah,
and he lands on the top of that building, and the sort of the lights go up on him, and it sort of like lights him up, and he's in that pose with the revolver and stuff. And I'm like, man, they've even like this film's like even managed to create like an iconic shot of like
Well,
of
it's amazing because like I know for all the production art and stuff, they literally just use the comic.
yes,
So it's just like if you read the book, I mean, yeah, I guess the main character's a little bit less shady. But other than that, it's pretty. You're getting everything you want from it.
mm. Oh yeah, totally, 100%. I mean, this is where Dick Tracy tried to do some sort of like warped version of the Dick Tracy comics. This is literally gone page to screen.
Yeah,
And I don't know how many people had sort of read the Rocketeer graphic novel.
I think it was a sort of a cult thing, wasn't it?
Mm. It was released independently, like it was an independent comic, wasn't
Yeah,
it? It didn't, but it's represented so well on screen,
yeah,
and the fact that like this didn't get a sequel. Let's say it was a flop at the time, but I mean, what would? It's one of those weird ones. Is like was it because it wasn't like Batman? I don't know why this didn't do
yeah.
better.
I don't know. Maybe it's just a case of like the subject matter just wasn't intriguing at the time. Like you say, you don't know like where were people's heads at, sort of thing.
Mm.
But yeah,
It's weird because I say because '89, just sort of a couple of years before, you'd had Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade,
yeah, yeah,
which
true.
did gangbusters, and that's all sort of like Nazis and stuff, but then that's an established character, so
Yeah, It's hard to say, isn't it? I guess there's probably something. I mean, sometimes it can just literally be when it's released in the year, something else can be going on, and
Yeah, so distracting from it. I don't know. I mean, I'd like to sort of might be worth looking into why. But of all the, we'll talk about the other two on the next show. But of these three, I was thinking as I was going through this, like, would I want to see these again? Not just these films, but these characters. Like,
yeah,
if someone was to pick this up again and say, I want to do this again, do a reboot or whatever, would I want to see it
yeah.
again? And I was watching Darkman and going like, dear God, no.
No, yeah. So that's an easy one.
Yeah, unless someone was to pick that up and sort of say, I'm going to go and do an all-out horror version of this.
Yeah.
Like it's going to be like really graphic and violent. I'm like, all right, I might watch that.
It'd be one of those things that you'd only watch it again if you saw a trailer and you're like, actually, that looks like a good film. It
Yeah.
wouldn't be anything to do with the fact that it's Darkman.
No, if they
You'd
announce,
just
if,
be like, if it looks like a good film, I'll watch it. But
yeah,
otherwise,
if they were to announce like a Darkman reboot, I'd be a bit like, really?
yeah.
Wow. Okay. Sam Raimi short cash. And like Dick Tracy, I don't think Dick Tracy works in. I don't think it translates to the big screen in the modern world. I don't
I
think
don't
they
know.
could do it.
Yeah, it's a strange thing, isn't it? Like, I'm sure there's probably a way of doing it, but I couldn't tell you it. There's a way of doing anything, I suppose. It's
Yeah.
a pretty vague way of
Yeah.
sticking it for it. But I've read like if you did it as a super pulpy thing that was a bit more, I don't know, a bit less egotistical almost.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. To be fair, I tried to read some of the original comics. I downloaded a couple of Comixology. Didn't last long.
No. Well, it's an interesting one. Like, I think Dick Tracy is very of its time. Like, the trouble is, it's like it was actually like as silly as the characters are and as daft as it looks. The guy that wrote it like studied real police crime stuff. Like, actually went in and did training for the book.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so he did like a fingerprints and stuff like that. He went in and trained for it when he was writing it, just so he could get the idea. And there was like issues where they used real cases and stuff. It's also the first comic book to have a murder in it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So
you see, so the book, the original comic book, has actually got some prestige. It's got some history. It's got a bit of sort of like something to it. It sounds like it's actually. It sounds like it's got some.
It's serious. It's a serious work.
Yeah.
With a bit of tongue-in-cheek characterization. And then you've got him and Tess with their relationship, and I think that was basically, it's all missed out in the new stuff.
I was going to say, yeah. I mean, that sounds like this was completely lost in translation for the film.
Yeah.
It focuses on the grotesque rather than on the sort of detection and the criminal, really.
Yeah, but I think that's probably a thing where when they made the cartoon of it and stuff like that, that's what they started concentrating on. You just have like silly looking characters in every episode, and then probably you'll find Warren Beatty might have been a fan as a kid
of the cartoon.
And that's what he liked about it.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
missed the point almost.
Yeah, it'd be interesting, sort of, because I suppose you could do it, but it's that thing of sort of like a genre mashup, isn't it? Like,
Yeah.
Could it be sort of like CSI Dick Tracy?
I know. It's like, you'd have to do it as a comedy, I guess, but
yeah. I mean, the only way I think you could really do it in that respect is if you were to go like the Batman 66.
Yeah, just
route.
oversee.
Yeah, and you had Dick Tracy in that sort of the Adam West.
It'd work as an animated film, I think.
Yeah, I could see that. I definitely could see that. If they were sort of
stuff, but yeah, it's a strange one. Whereas Rocketeer, I mean, I would look like, how good would it be to see a Rocketeer that actually had like the shadowing and stuff?
Oh, well, that's the thing that I was sort of coming to, because I agree. I think there's an element of all this is how much could they continue, and we'll get onto the other two, the sort of the Phantom and the Shadow, the next show. But I would love to see the Rocketeer again.
Yeah,
and I think if you were to sort of do like a pared down, like it is. Like you don't have to have the whole superhero kind of thing. Like, you could easily do the Rocketeer um, today. The special effects would
Yeah,
be amazing, and I think it would really get over. I think kids could really get into it, or I'd really get into it as well. So,
yeah.
um,
Well, I think it helps from the fact that it's like timeless almost, because when it was made, it's already like a nostalgia piece.
mm,
So you've got that in there, and that will always be there. We can always look on those times and you know look at the things we liked about them, and that's
yeah.
what the piece is, and it's got everything of it, and it's not going to change.
No, well, you say that. So there was talk of them rebooting the Rocketeer. I think about probably a year or two ago, and it was going to be. And I heard this. Oh, that sounds really exciting. What's it going to be? How are they going to do this? Who could play Cliff Secord and this other stuff? And then you read about it, and like, right, it's going to be a team of girls.
Yeah. Well,
And I
there's
sort, and I was sort of
there's a
like,
cartoon now, isn't there?
is there? I haven't seen
Yeah,
it.
it's a little girl that's got a jetpack.
And so is it the Rocketeer though? Is it sort of like supposed to
Yeah,
be
it's proper branded The Rocketeer, but it's like Little Rocketeer Adventures or something. It's like you know, like a proper young kiddies show.
right? Because to me, when
Disney.
the first I mean, that sounds fine if it's going to get kids into it. And I've got no problem with things being having like the gender swap and all this sort of thing. Like I'm never that bothered by it because you go, well, you've always got the other stuff, and I can go back
Yeah,
and read the graphic novel, I can watch the original film, but
exactly.
there's still this thing saying like, but this has still got massive potential. Like
Yeah,
you use that first and then do
yeah,
that later. Like you've still got time to do that. Make it good. Like use the source material. Like go back to that. Um, and I just don't think it's been given the opportunity, which is a real shame.
yeah. Because it is like when you read, they've got a lot. It's not. I mean, it's not just the Shadow as well, is it? It's like what's his name, Doc.
Oh, Doc Savage.
Doc
Well,
Savage is in it as well and stuff, isn't he? And
yeah. So
there's
I
a
mean,
few references, so it'd be cool to see. Like those are people that no one even knows anymore. Like,
no. I mean, there is a Doc Savage movie from the '70s. It's god
yeah,
awful. I don't
I know,
recommend it.
yeah,
Um, but it's one of those things where, like, I would love to see, and I'm not talking like a massive shared universe, but you could do a pulp, and I've said this on a number of shows. Like, you
yeah.
could do a pulp hero shared universe, and you could use the Rocketeer becomes your sort of point of view character.
Because that's basically what it is anyway.
Mm,
You're not straying from the story even. Like he works for the Shadow. Like
yeah,
his jetpack's made by Dot Savage.
yeah, yeah.
All these things, and
But
you just play on a bit more.
we'll see what we think about the Shadow movie and the Phantom and stuff. But like,
Yeah,
I mean, you could easily do. I mean, if we sort of take it, if we go back to that original source of what those characters are, Doc Savage came about in I think 32. The
yeah,
Shadow came about in 33. We'll talk more about next show, but like, so they came out in the early 30s, and that's when they came out in the pulp. There was the radio shows for the Shadow, and then you have others sort of like say the Phantoms in the comics. You've got the Spider. There's Justice Inc. There's
yeah.
Miss
Well,
Fiora.
have you ever read? There's a book I would highly recommend it. It's called Masks.
Yes, the first I've
Yeah,
seen. There was because they did a follow up, didn't they? Masks 2.
yeah. I never
Um,
read them.
but I didn't read the second one. But yeah, Masks 1 was really good. That had, like I say, had a
Yeah,
Morgan, didn't it?
yeah. And
Um,
that was like the first thing I really read with any of them in.
yeah,
To be honest. And then all of a sudden, it's like these characters are amazing. Like I want to read more.
yeah. And I mean, really, the Shadow in particular. Like I say, we'll definitely get more to this.
Yeah,
But the Shadow has had all kinds of comics. I mean, there was DC had him for a time and did a series. Denny O'Neil did one,
yeah,
and then more recently with Dynamite, Garth Ennis has done a run, and they're really good. They are really
yeah.
good. Um,
Well, yeah. I mean, I read the Garth Ennis volume and
mm,
personally didn't really like it, but um, I've read a few of them. And I think there's more in the run that's supposed to be. He only did one volume, didn't he, Garth Ennis?
It's no, I think it runs to
I think
about.
he did one volume. Someone else did the second, and then Chris Robertson, who did Masks, did volume 3 and 4.
Oh, okay, I'll have to check. Yeah,
Yeah,
but because I've got them on Comixology and stuff, so I've read a couple of them. I really, I think they're good. There's been good and bad because there was a more recent one as well, which I wasn't overly keen on. Um, but yeah, I mean, I've gone back and read. Even gone back and read like the pulps. I've got a couple of them kicking about and stuff,
yeah,
and the Doc Savage stuff as well. Like Doc Savage is clearly the sort of I don't care what anyone says, right? You've got the Light in the Dark, which is Batman and Robin, and not Batman, so Batman and Superman,
yeah,
right? You've got and then so that's the Man of Steel and the Dark Knight, right?
yeah,
Literally almost sort of like 5 to 8 years before that, you've got the Man of Bronze and the Dark
yeah,
Vigilante.
yeah.
You know,
Yeah, it's exactly like nothing's ever as new as people think, though, is it?
no.
Nothing's original.
No. So, but yeah, I'd love to see the Rocketeer again. I really would,
Yeah,
because
definitely.
IDW have actually got the comic rights, and they've done a series of comics,
Yeah,
which I've read a couple of those. They've been quite good fun. So I recommend some of those. There was one called, is it Horror in Hollywood? That was quite good. And there's another one, The Spirit. Um,
yeah,
that character, sort of Will Eisner's The Spirit.
yeah,
Um, that's another character where the comics are much better than the film because the Frank Miller
yeah.
version
No,
of the film,
basically, just he suffered the film,
yeah, that film's
which
awful.
is yeah,
Um, but again, that's another great character that sort of has popped up in things. Um, so yeah, no, the Rocketeer, I really enjoy this film. It's in sort of rotation. I'll watch it quite often.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, so I think between us, I think we're quite agreed that the Rocketeer is definitely the best of the three in this
Oh
scenario.
yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed the Rocketeer. I think it was definitely like it was a good film, and
Mm,
the other two didn't feel like
a good film.
good films.
So that's the first three in this little series. I think we can definitely see sort of, as you said, that the heavy by 1990, a year later, the heavy Batman hangover that the
Yeah,
world was suffering, um, and sort of a year after, we have the Rocketeer, which is a completely different tone and an excellent film. And so it's on Disney Plus. You can get it on DVD and Blu-ray. In fact, what I would say is the cover as well. I don't know if you've seen it, but the cover of not
yeah,
the crap one, but there's like an Art Deco style cover of him taking off, like zooming
yeah,
up. It's awesome.
yeah. It's really cool. I mean, again though, like all the art is just basically it's exactly the same as the books and stuff.
Mm.
So it's just wicked.
Yeah, it's a high recommend then for the Rocketeer. So next episode we're going to get back together and we are going to talk about two more sort of final pulp hero films that came out in the 90s. 1994's The Shadow with Alec Baldwin,
Yeah,
who
classic.
it yeah, and in that I think we'll be talking a lot about like why the hell wasn't Alec Baldwin Batman. Um,
Yeah,
and then also 1997's The Phantom with Billy Zane. And I have to admit, I haven't watched that yet, and I haven't watched that in years.
oh
And
boy.
I watched the trailer the other day, and I was like, I don't know whether this looks fun or
Oh man,
shit.
the trailer itself is. Well, I watched the trailer before,
Yeah,
and I'm pretty sure it feels like a comedy sketch.
yeah. There's bits in the film where I'm like, I think this is. I'm not. I don't know whether the film's supposed to be straight, but I watched it. And I was thinking like,
Yeah.
this looks like a campy romp. This could be quite good fun. I'm not sure if that's what they're going for.
We shall see.
Yeah. What I would say is before we get to the final thing, we talked about other films, and the others just popped to mind, but I didn't include it in this because it sort of seemed a bit later and it's not so much pulpy. But the other thing is the end of the decade, you get 1999, you get Zorro as well.
Yeah,
Uh,
I thought about when I was watching him. I was like, oh, we didn't watch Zorro because that
yeah,
is, but it's so different.
it is. But that's a hell of a good film, that is.
Yeah, I
And
mean, to be honest, I've seen it a lot of times anyway. So
yeah. And that's a
yeah,
film where I
it's-
actually, yeah, because that's because Zorro's good for Antonio Banderas is really good in that.
yeah,
It's weird to have Anthony Hopkins playing a Spanish person, but that's a different story.
Yeah,
But I watched Zorro not long ago, probably sort of start of this year, and again, I've really enjoyed it. I think it's really good.
yeah,
But all I kept thinking of is like, wow, Pirates of the Caribbean owes quite a lot
yeah.
to Zorro.
I know. Yeah, like Zorro is a bit of a. It's a weird one because it's not a very well remembered film,
Mm,
and it's it's not Oscar worthy or anything, but it's a fun film, and
mm.
I love Zorro, to be honest. Such a cool character.
Yeah, it is. It really is. Another one that came about a lot earlier. I think Zorro's like 1919, something like that, maybe even earlier than that.
Yeah,
So predates, the Zorro, the Zorro novel. No, 1909, I think the Zorro novel. So, predates all those. Predates like you've got. In fact, if I remember rightly, sort of the person who wrote Zorro was obviously inspired by things like the Scarlet Pimpernel, which was the sort of like
yeah,
late Victorian, and then you get people like Bill Finger and uh, Maxwell Grant who created the Shadow. Sort of they all sort of like credit Zorro and his design and his look for when they created their characters. So as you say, nothing's original. It's all just recycling of
yeah.
what's come
Everything
before.
is exactly. But
Yeah.
if you're looking for a good Zorro read, the Matt Wagner stuff is
Mm.
like the comics are amazing. Also, there's a real. I don't know if you've read Django meets Zorro.
No, I is it good? I did. I've
It's
seen it. A few...
genuinely really, really like it. It helps, I think, if you've read Matt Wagner's Zorro because it actually is that version of Zorro.
Right.
Um,
Is it the Quentin Tarantino version of Django?
yeah, so yeah, he's Quentin Tarantino's written it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah, and it to be fair, you don't have to know. I mean, if you know Zorro, it doesn't matter anyway. It just is like a little bonus if you've read
Mm.
this one before. But yeah, I was really impressed by it, to be honest. Like
Cool.
usually, especially how often you see filmmakers writing comics, and you're like, oh,
Yeah.
that's not what I wanted. There's very
Yeah.
few. I think there's the only other one I've read, just to go slightly off topic, was John Carpenter wrote an issue of about the Joker,
Oh, yeah. I heard about that. Yeah.
which is really good. And I got it. Like it's probably not going to be very good, whatever. I was really impressed. But yeah, going back to Zorro, that's a brilliant book.
Okay, I'll definitely check that on
Yeah,
Comixology and stuff. Um, but yes, let's wrap it up there then. So I think we've actually sort of at least we had one of these films we really enjoyed, and let's hope we get at least one out of the two for the next episode.
yeah,
We shall see. But Matt, it's been great to have you back on. Really
yeah.
enjoyed
No, it's
talking about
great
this.
to be on.
And just so one last thing. So where can people find ToonJam?
Anywhere you get your podcast, so Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, we're on all of them. So yes, ToonJam podcast, you'll find us. And if you want to get in touch with us or anything, we're on the social medias as at ToonJam Pod,
Excellent.
so you can find us there.
Cool. Right. Well, Matt, we shall talk about this again next time. I'll see you again soon.
See you soon.
Okay then, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. We have covered our first 3 pulp hero films. Darkman, Dick Tracy and The Rocketeer. But the fun doesn't end there. We have got 2 more films to go on our next episode. On the next episode, we are going to be covering 1994's The Shadow and 1997's The Phantom. Do we love them? Do we hate them? Well, tune in next time. Same pulp time, same pulp podcast. We will be talking more about those and other things as well, other podcasty type things. But in addition to that, thank you very much for listening. I always appreciate all listeners and engage with us. What are your thoughts on these films? Come and say hello on the Twitters or Instagram or Facebook page. All of it under 20th Century Geek. So for Twitter, it's at 20th Century Geek. And the same for Instagram and on Facebook. Just search for 20th Century Geek and you'll find the page. Come say hello, come join. There's always notifications and news and things going on those pages. More than that, if you want to help and support the show, please go on your podcast catcher, leave a review. We really appreciate all reviews that are left. 5-star, 3-star, 4-star, whatever they are. Preferably a 5-star one, but if you've got any thoughts or any feedback, please let us know. We greatly, greatly appreciate them. More than that, we have also got to keep the lights on here in 20th Century Towers. We've got things like a Amazon gift list if you want to send us some books or some other things. All of that second-hand books, greatly appreciated and much loved. But also, we have got back on the Patreon bandwagon. It helps us pay for things. It helps us keep things like the domain and all of the bits and pieces going. So, what can you do for that? Well, there are 3 tiers. There is there is the fan, there is the chief, and there is the VIP. And in those, each one of them will get access to a monthly podcast just called Scott's 30-Minute Thoughts. I pick a subject. Well, no, I don't pick a subject. That's the point. A subject is chosen, and I'll just give 30 minutes on thoughts on that. The first one has already been decided. That is, or was, Neil Gaiman's Sandman, issue 1. The next one is going to be on Jaws, the 1976 blockbuster Jaws. So, check it out. Do you want to join and support the show? And I greatly appreciate all my Patreons. Wonderful, wonderful friends of the show, and thank you for your support. Also, in addition to that, there's other things. You get to vote on what subject I choose. That's in the second tier, and in that third tier, the £10 tier, the big boys, you get to choose on a poll every quarter. So 4 times a year, you'll get to choose a subject for the main stream, the main feed podcast. So there you go. Leave reviews, check out the Amazon gift list, and also check out Patreon. Okay, it's Patreon Podcast. You'll find us on there. So please let us know what you think. And as I say, same pod time, same pod channel. I'll see you next time, guys.